But that's the importance of like those first couple weeks of the school year or the semester or of the quarter, because routines and procedures work out for me. That's probably generous. See? Oh, no, Tommy. That's me. So Dr. Guevara and her team built a very rich attendance conversation for us. And I want to do it justice, and I hope I do. So I'm going to ask her afterwards. When people watch the recording, I said, did I do you justice? So this portion is around our attendance, behavior, and social emotional learning data. We've also incorporated some of the partnerships that we've had, like the through Spiffy and the surveys that they've done into it to kind of give a holistic view around SEL and some of the next steps. And so, like I said, Dr. Guevara and her team built this, her, Colleen, and I May. And so this is on behalf of the Office of Student Wellbeing and Public Advocacy. Please let her know I did really well. So absenteeism is very important. Attendance, not absenteeism. Absenteeism is important for us to study, but attendance is important. If they are not here, we cannot support. If a child is not present, we cannot support them. And so one of the things that we track, principals will tell you weekly, they get a chart from Marta with, sometimes it feels like daily. This is the percentage you're supposed to be at. You are not here. like you are supposed to be at 90% or 80%, and your school came up at 60% this week. Like Marta sends the numbers every week to the principals and engages in this conversation on attendance. And so chronic absenteeism means that a child has missed at least 10% of a school year, right? And attendance works will talk about those 18 days. 18 days is very significant in a 180-day school year. Again, if they are not here, we cannot support them. I'm not saying teach them. I'm saying support them. Because in our holistic view in our system, it's not just about the academic performance. There are other long-term implications that are missed. They also don't get to engage with our great guidance counselors. They don't get to engage with their peers. They don't get to sit in a safe space or a space and say, hey, I'm having a hard day, and work through strategies with a teacher, with a friend, or even with an adult they've identified as safe. So we talk about them not just in terms of chronic absenteeism, but looking at students who are absent. And the more that those numbers increase, the more likely they are to drop out of school. The more likely they are to drop out of school because of the loss that they've experienced by not being present. It widens the gap in their instructional, or I don't like to talk deficit-based, but this is a hard conversation, so we're gonna dig deep. So in terms of chronic absenteeism in Massachusetts, it's a significant issue. And it's increased by 72% from 2019 to 2023. However, if you look at our numbers in terms of comparison to our enrollment and the number of students who have 18 or more absences, the percentages may seem small, except for Summit, because Summit is a small school, the therapeutic-based school. But it's still significant enough that we are seeing in many of our schools in double digits. And even for a school as small as Pelham, 3 is a lot. So we are, in terms of looking at our numbers, our high school being our largest population, about 12% of that population has chronic absenteeism, which equates to 99 students. Wow. That's almost 100 students who have more than 18 absences in the system. So the DESE district average of 17% for students with 18 plus absences. And you'll notice that the blue is the total percentage of students with 15 or more absences. So they're already at risk of meeting chronic truancy. And then the red is the students who have already met it for each site. So you can see how when we're matching, and I'm telling you, these data conversations are rich in our small groups. When we're matching on what we're looking for. Now, again, some of it is a smaller setting, so the numbers are like, if they had 3, it would be outrageous. But we're looking at not just who are already considered truant, but we're already looking at who's approaching truancy. So we're looking at 15. If we were to add 10 or more absences, we felt it was a lot, but you would start to see that there's a progressive trend in terms of absenteeism in schools. Now, one of the things that we're going to work towards in our tracking is at what points of the year do you see more than you see less, right? We also have the conversations across grade levels. A lot of times, if you ask the principals, they and their team are calling and saying, hey, how can we help you? How can we support you? What does this look like? You know, we didn't see you here today. It's already been 3 days. And yes,
So in looking at this chart, to take Crocker Farm for everyone, I'm sorry, I don't get everyone's comments. If I look at this Crocker Farm data, does that mean that 13% of the students have 15 or more absences?
Yes.
So it's combining these two things. So at Wildwood, 19% of the student body
have
has
15 or more. Yes, because they would have 18 states.
Okay.
You're welcome. And thank you for that. Now that's my train of thought, but we'll keep going. So here she does a very good job of not just showing the overarching, but trying to pull out by our demographics and the overrepresentation of absentees in terms of truancy. So in our district population, these are our Caucasian students, our multiracial students, our Hispanic or Latino students, our Black or African American students, Asian, American Indian, and Native Hawaiian. And so you start to see how when we pull out who makes up our percentages, what those demographics look like. We also went into our subgroups to determine which of our subgroups are more than likely to be truant. And one of the key things that we had, and we started to notice, were that our students who have 504s or SC programs are at least 2 times more likely to be truant than others for a variety of reasons, right? And so this is why when we talk about data, we have to actually look at the whole picture of the child versus singular snapshots. So when we talk about district populations, if a student has been identified as low income, they are also more likely to be truant. And so she quickly switches to behavioral incidents. But in terms of attendance, we wanted to kind of present that picture of what are we looking at and how do we serve our students. And everything's going to drive into how it shows up in academics in the next presentation. So when we talk about behavioral incidents, our incident data for 25-26 academic year, in total right now, there are about 189 total incidents, right? 7 schools reporting, there are about 64 suspensions, 66 minor altercations. However, what she says is 2 schools account for 63% of all our incidents that are in the data that shows here. And it's our larger schools. It's our middle school and our high school, right? Then they also present in terms of, what's happening with our suspensions. And they also present in terms of physical altercations. Minor is the most common incident type district-wide. So not just with them, but in all of the incidents that's listed. The one thing that she wanted to point out was that data is limited. So behavior records are captured as narratives. So a lot of what we're able to pull out, we actually have to go in and read through and identify. Now, that helps with the qualitative side, but we also need to see how it reflects in the numbers. So there may be some anomalies in these numbers that present, because it's the other thing is information about bullying behavior and student support, they live in separate places. And so it's the team now in pulling this together have to create a convergence into one place. So Her office has completed an inventory of where the information lives and are working on a plan to bring it all together, to house it. We've already identified or started to identify through different conversations, someone who's able to even create a dashboard that will pull this data for us and allow us to see what it looks like. It's gonna take some forms and not doing things paper-based, because a lot of our things are also paper-based, it's not digitized. Now, families are reporting. Families are having conversations. Families are calling and saying, this happened with my child at school. Caregivers are coming in and saying, this incident occurred in different places. They are reporting. About 20% actually are considered bullying. So she pulled our bull data, the BRIM data for bullying. And from that platform, 233 reports were filed between 2025 and first quarter. So last year and this year in terms of quarter. 20% of those were confirmed bullying cases. 80% were of a different concern. What we're finding is that although our bullying reporting software BRIM is the only software that parents or students know that they can report something that the school is going to look at or dive into. So now we have an increase, which is great because they have an avenue, but it is our avenue to report bullying. So what we're doing now is anything that is reported, we have to look into, but we're also identifying how do we capture parental concerns of different things that are not bullying so that's not lost. Because sometimes we narrow our focus. And that's a conversation that's right here, the routing problem. And prioritizing a clear way for families and students to report concerns so the right response is given. So it's not just like, okay, we've ruled out bullying and move on, but this is now how are we closing the circuit or the loop. What we've also seen is that there is a recurrence, and so we have to shift our culture in terms of name calling, insults, and harassing language are present in nearly every report. And we have a concern because we're seeing homophobic or transphobic and racist incidents are recurring themes, especially at our middle school level. So we're trying to build now, what this points out is we have to shift something in the culture. This is not just what are we doing as a system, we have to shift something in our culture in terms of how we operate. Suspension, this portion, this one is a good one. So we kind of started to break out incidents by gender, by ethnicity, by age. We wanted to even check our subgroups in terms of English learners, because a lot of individuals, especially newcomers, like it's not just that they don't know how to behave. It actually talks about maybe a shift in culture, like what I think is okay from where I am culturally. I learned that real quick. Some of the things I say is not appropriate for Alice. But it flies in the BI, but it was not sit well here. And so when we look at the data, it's not just about the numbers, right? We have to dig into what each one of these incidents actually say about what's happening with students. And so we're also looking at, in terms of our suspensions and our behavioral data, where is the focus again? And one of the key things that we're pointing out is of the percentage male students, also young teens. And then our African American and Black students. So we're kind of looking to see about where's that overrepresentation and what do we need to do? Yes.
I missed it. Do you have percentages, and on the right there's by gender? Is it, we're looking at 140 incidents total, and those are the percentages, I think?
So this is overarching behavior,
Yeah.
like overarching like all. And then this is the percent suspensions.
So what is the actual number of, that you're looking at the percentages of?
On this side,
Yeah,
so out of the suspensions that we talked about earlier, the overarching number of suspensions, the percentage of suspensions by African American students is 25.
Was it 64? What was the total?
If you go
Oh,
back.
Oh, sorry,
That's
okay,
okay.
let me go back.
Just trying to help you.
Thank
64,
you.
there it is.
that's,
Okay.
Yes.
thank you.
And then this is out of the 189. Thank you.
So you got it here.
So this, yes,
You got kind of
oh. Somebody have to run around with a second mic.
Thank you. And maybe I'm asking too soon, but do you find that it's a small number of students who are repeatedly being disciplined or needing to be disciplined or found responsible? Or is this really, it's 66 different people? So is the problem very large or really in some respects focused?
So there's a balance in this in school systems where you have repeat offenders, and offenders is not the word I want to use, but that's the word that, you have students who repeat the same behaviors, or they show up differently. It's not the same behavior, but they show up in repeated incidents. So you would have a name of an individual who shows up in repeated incidents. And so then we start to say, okay, if you were suspended for painting the wall black the first time, the second time you were suspended for kicking down a chair, the third time, now we're seeing that it's not a repeat in the behavior, but there is a pattern for you. Then we kind of have a different discussion. We start to see, maybe you're not suspended, maybe it's just a behavioral incident that was reported through EH or something around you. Then we start to look deeper and say, what time of day? Like a question that I've been asked one time as a teacher, so what time of day does this student really act up? And you start to realize as a student, as a teacher, every time it's a math lesson, you can expect Xiomara to act up. She's gonna shout out, she's gonna do something. So we're trying to determine to what may be the prompt of the behavior. I hope that answers the question. So our community is carrying significant stress. This is our Massachusetts statewide youth data, our community, and then there's gaps in the data. One of the key things is that we wanted to not negate or stem away from the fact that what we may be seeing in terms of behavioral incidents is, again, not just a reflection of academic supports, but also what is happening at home or in our community. There's a lot that's reflected in terms of what happens outside that comes into the school buildings, in terms of understanding, beliefs, misunderstandings. Sometimes a student asks a question, but because of what they ask, it may be offensive to another, and that shows up in a report, or that shows up in something. So there's a lot of times what we as a community are experiencing, and think of it as adults. We've lived most of our lives carrying through and living through these stressors. These are children who are now exposed to stressors a lot earlier, and there's access to everything in terms of what's happening in the community in their hands, real time. I mean, I'm still trying to catch up to some of the slangs that they have, I don't know. So, but the gap is that we don't currently have a district level way to track, for example, self-harm concerns. We do have ways that if they're using their devices, they may search something inappropriately, but there's things that they don't search. So again, we talked about individuals who use our BRIM reports, right? And they're reporting things. We've had where someone has used BRIM to report, I'm worried about my friend. And so now it's not a bullying report, but now they found a way. So we need to create ways to kind of fill the gaps as a system. And that is our central priority, especially when it comes to data and the inventory that we're taking. The Hampshire County Youth Survey showed that in many instances, students don't believe that adult intervention works. And so we, last year, ARPS did take part in the Hampshire County Youth Survey. Our high school numbers were low, our participation level numbers at high school was low. That in itself signals a gap for us. But in terms of the overarching survey from Hampshire County, where 2,303 students across 17 schools, answered, this is how it's showing up, not just for us, but across the county. And so, we're trying to address this and make sure that we are, again, holding space for the whole child. And you notice in terms of mental health and safety, most days students come to school anxious. Most days they are depressed or sad. Most days they feel alone or left out. So we are trying again, do they feel like our schools are prepared for self-harm? Or do adults act quickly on bullying? They don't feel that way across Hampshire. So we actually have to start to build those systems in place, and this goes back to being reactive without proactive support. So we found a gap. Here is the plan. So again, Dr. Guevara and her department have actually said that, hey, we found information about bullying, we have all of these different things, behavior, we're updating our PPIP, and when a concern is reported, it's not always clear who is responsible for tracking. Well, we see that investigations are being done. So we're now putting in that system of accountability. We're developing or firming up our SEL programming, but it varies by school, right? Again, it varies by school. And so there's not a consistent progression from K-12, going back to that coherence. And what are we building? We talked about our PPIP, our district-wide SEL initiative, and reviewing how we collect and connect information about student concerns so we identify the patterns and put supports in earlier. And so there's a series of things that are going to come next. And my team told me to say this when I started and I forgot. We will give the slideshow, the slides will be available after for everyone to share. So her key takeaways, and I'm very grateful that she had this. The data tells a story. Behavioral incidents and suspensions are concentrated to schools. It's also that, it's far-fetched. It's not far-fetched that high school and middle schoolers have a different level of energy. But African American and Black students in poverty, and adolescent males are disproportionately affected and identified in this data. These are patterns for us and not anomalies. Families are reporting, but the tool only captures one type of concern. So now it's up for us to identify or create a tool that will help us identify those additional concerns. And we are not reacting, or we are being proactive in our reaction to support our students. And we cannot see the full picture of students at risk. We have a lot of self-harm and safety concerns. I'm not going to tell you in the past 2 weeks how we have been up at least 9, 10 o'clock at night in collaboration, connection, and communication with our agencies around students. And it's not just the middle school and high school. It is affecting even our elementary schools. One student is too much. And so they're struggling, especially when they notice that the systems fall short. But we do have a plan. It does have a timeline, and it will continue to be iterative because we're going to have to continue to course correct and move forward. And so with that, I think it is now what the averages may be hiding. Instruction. Come on. No. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you. Oh, I see Anna's hand.
Can I ask you a question before you start?
Yes, ma'am.
Works, Annie, want to try the mic, see if that works? Nope. Nope, not on.
Button on bottom.
There we go. Okay.
just saying.
No?
And I will hear you.
I think it's on.
Hey.
Hey, so, I am a firm believer that suspension is not a great tool. It takes kids away from learning that need learning the most. And, it often places them in an environment that causes the reason for their suspension, because if you're sending them home to an environment that is unfriendly, and that's why they're acting out at school and causing the concerns, spending more time at home is not going to fix the problem. So I'm asking, what are you doing to reduce the use of suspension? And there's obviously preventive measures that you can do, but also just training on when suspension is appropriate and when it's not appropriate. And I think that if what you're trying to solve is a problem that, you're looking at, like, what are you trying to solve by using suspension? And if that suspension is not going to solve that problem, then maybe it shouldn't be used.
And then just to add to that, obviously in-school suspension is very different than out-of-school suspension, so if you want to speak to those differently, or at least refine the answer about that, that would be helpful.
So I will say that, and I'm not sure where directly she pulled the data sources, but I do know, for example, at our middle school, they use ISS, in-school suspension, right? And I believe that's one of their more frequent go-tos than out-of-school suspension. They have an assigned room where you go, you do your instruction. There is supports in place, adult supports. I'm not going to pick on him because he's here. So there's adult supports. So I firmly believe there's different levels to what happens, but it all reports out as in one bucket category. I will also say that anything that has come to my desk in terms of an out of school beyond a certain number of days had to have been a very severe action. I have not seen, even in emergency removals, where individuals are removed from the school campus that time until they have the meeting, where it is something that is, I'm going to say, trivial, and is not something that is identified as possibly harming not just themselves, but others around them in the environment. I think that as a district leadership team, or even a collective, we need to identify additional supports. I know for a fact that it's funny that Mr. Paul is here, because he had told me about a mentorship program, but then in the data chat with Cracker Farm last week, they brought up that there was a group of students who needed some semblance of support, and their behaviors were not within what we would want to see. And so they were able to connect to mentors to come in and have conversations with these students. I know that it's beyond just training around what are the options, it's also providing clear options or steps of interventions before we get to that suspension point. So I can't pull it out right now because I don't know, I'm not accessing Power School to say this is in-school suspension versus out of school. Is one big bucket. But I do agree and acknowledge with what you're saying. And many times the students act out forward, sending them back to the environment that they were running from. So I feel like there are progressive steps, at least in one district, that we move forward. And in another district, we see where they lean on the community to show different examples and have that. So that's where we're talking about the collective.
Yes.
Thank you, Jed Pujanski from Leverett. I hate to belabor a point about suspension, but I think that we often isolate a student who did some act that we don't like from everybody else, when in fact there are community problems that are happening. So bullying is often not one person bullying another person. It is a whole context of that classroom or that environment allowing a student to get isolated and bullied. You never see bullying of the person that everybody loves. It's always that person who is generally pushed out that then allows a bully to bully somebody. And so that there is responsibility of the entire class or environment that has to be addressed. And by pulling somebody out, we ignore the large part of the problem.
So I would say that's one context, and thank you for that. And what that lends in is that we've had conversations recently about identifying bystander, that's what it is, Carol, we're talking about, bystander?
Active bystander.
Active bystander, right. Active bystander training for individuals, because a lot of the times things occur, and even in that moment, even though I am in the class, I might be having my own reaction to what is happening to someone else. So it is not that I do not want to support someone or I am adding to pushing them out. It might be how I am processing the moment as well. So there are some things that we can't say is the whole culture, but we can say that there are some things that we need to do as a system to make sure that we're supporting students, and keeping in mind that if I am seeing something occurring with someone or hearing something that's occurring with someone else, I too am processing what I am experiencing in that moment. And it may not be that I do not want to support you, but maybe I am going through something for myself. So that's the balance of where we are I wouldn't say that it's because everyone wants in a classroom wants to shun someone. I also have to say that you don't allow yourself to be bullied. It's something that happens to you and what you experience. And so we have to recognize what that individual, the word that we have, and it's the word that is across it, the person who feels targeted or the target is experiencing in that moment is the reality for them. And it may be, again, that they allow themselves to do that, to be done to them, but it's what they experience and they have no other choice in their reaction.
I have a quick question. Sorry,
You're not allowed to ask, believe.
I'm not asking.
I'm joking.
So for the anxious child,
Yes,
obviously that was like a standout
yes.
in data for Hampshire.
Yeah.
Have we looked at, she mentioned cleaning hands, have we looked at cell phones and different rules around cell phones to help decrease the anxious child?
So there's a DESI initiative about getting the cell phones out of the classrooms, and our Senator Comerford has pointed out recently that districts with limited financial resources don't have the ability to implement those DESI initiatives.
It's sent from a law. I think DESI is created a regulation based on the law. They do have some grants and things available. And I also want to step back to, I understand in terms of digital safety what you're saying. I think that one of the key things that has happened recently, especially in our districts, is we've seen an increase of not just in school, but out of school digital use and being a citizen. Social media is real, Google is real. I yesterday, I will not even say what I opened up and I was scrolling and I said, wait a minute, did that say Z Summit? But it wasn't me, it was Chi Summit, it was something else. China, right? But the access to information and the access to each other is so real time that yes, I believe the middle school had cell phone bags at one time where students used to, secure the cell phones. I think the high school had something similar. Now there's a statewide initiative around, implementing like no cell phone schools and environments. And I sent an email and I'm serious, like even if it's not in the school environment, when they leave here, they still have access to their cell phones. We have to educate our children around being a digital citizen and identifying safe adults who can support them if something goes wrong or they feel uncomfortable or they see something. They feel like Snapchat, delete something in 24 hours so I can put something on there and it can go away. So there's a lot that we have to catch up to and try to input that towards our culture.
Hello, everyone. I have the privilege of leading the Division of Student Academic Success. That is our SSO, MLE, CIA department. So you love acronyms, don't you? Student Support Services, we have our Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, we have our Multilingual Learners, those three divisions. So we are just blessed to have Beth, I'm going through the office, Beth, Maria, Lisa, Nancy, Nora, Mary Ann, Joanne, and Sonia in our SSO department. And congratulations to Joanne, her son graduated from college. And in, I know, right? And in MLE, we have Celia. Celia's daughter is graduating from college right now. And congratulations to her. And then you have Lindsay, Jen, my fearless partner, Stephanie, and myself. I'm from South Carolina, and we have I'm from a district that has 83 schools. I'm from a very big school district. We have a high school that has 2,600 students. That high school is bigger than our entire 3 districts put together. Every year, we have a State of the Districts summit. It's every year we have this. And one of the things that happens at it, we have before that actual Saturday, leading up to it, State of the Schools. So principals report to their smaller constituent groups. One of the things that happened when we first started this process, maybe about 20 years ago, so about 10 years in, this big high school, they put their numbers up and they were showing, oh, they're above the state average and all these things. And one person in the audience said, hey, could you tell me how are the subgroups doing? It's a very different story when you start looking at subgroups. But I am blessed right now to be in Amherst. People talk about equity all the time. Yes, you do. And that's what I get to do. I get to present to you all, and I think I presented to almost everybody in this room, where I get to disaggregate the data. So we're going to be stopped at 10:55, and they're going to
It's 10:52, so you got.
oh,
What? It's already 10:52.
okay, everybody go in your folders, please find this. You have a summary from the, oh my goodness, are you serious?
Yes.
All right, so everybody, you find this, please find this. It's in your folder somewhere. I know I put it in there. So turn to your partners, to table mates, see if you can see it. I will. In the end, it's in there. So one of the things that happens is we're taking a look at all 3 districts. I've presented MCAS data for you before. Please note that MCAS is one of the metrics, one of the point in times that we have. And when we brag about being above the state, we are going to also use it for all the other things too. So this is where we are taking a look from 2017 to 2025. We've always been above the state. This is Amherst in English. Actually, no, take a look. 2017, we were below the state, and then we jumped up. And then in math, the same thing happened. Amherst above the state. I know I'm going to go fast. Hold the questions. Are you sure?
Yes.
You know you have Stephanie and I. Don't say that.
Well, Stephanie's gonna go fast.
Okay.
We're
So,
gonna adjust the group time.
thank you.
Okay.
So here we are with our Amherst data. Again, this is just longitudinal because one of the things we actually need to know when we start looking at subgroups, did this just happen? And you all are here and you've been here for a while where you heard the narrative of, oh, well, the demographics of our community has changed. So that's why there is this disparate type experience for our students. And actually, I was looking at it, no, we've always had this going on for at least 10 years. When we take a look at Pelham, notice that Pelham has always been above the state average, 2017, 2025. Notice that even as they are above the state averages, things have changed in terms of proficiency. And I'm looking at MCAS again, meeting or exceeding. And so you take a look here in English and you take a look at math. Again, meeting above the state, but still, there's a trajectory that we have. Notice that it's been a downward trajectory, but still above the state. When we look at the regional middle school, again, trends that we're looking at being above state average, but still, there's been this dip. And I don't know what was happening in the 2020s, 2021s, but something took place and then there was a big dip. But again, still above the state average, and that's where we are. And then we look at the high school, again, above the state average. I want to note here for our high school MCAS, the way, if you look at 2017, 2018, and the numbers might seem really high, you're like, no, wow. There was a different metric for the MCAS data back then, but it was in the DESE equivalent to meeting or exceeding, so I still put it on there since that's the way they aligned it. But it was a very different numbering metric for percent of achievement. back then. But notice where we are. Still above the state average in some instances, coming up in English and then going down in math. There is not only the experience students have academically in the classroom around a particular test, there's also the experience in terms of student access. Who's getting to take the courses that we offer? And in terms of our advanced coursework, I want you to notice that we have 119 students in AP English, AP Global Studies, 74, AP Statistics, AP Biology. You see the numbers there. And we have community partners that have just shown up for us. And Sarah's sitting right in front of me, but we have 14 students that actually attend Amherst College and are taking multivariable calculus. Now, I was a high school math teacher, so I was calculus and algebra 2. I'm like, yes, can I get in that cohort? Because I love it. And then we have 5 kids doing dual enrollment at GCC and HCC. We have opportunities for our students. We have things that happen. Look at our graduation rate. We have innovative career pathways. We have lots of things happening for our kids. The question that we're going to sit with today is that an even experience for all of our students? So if you take a look at the advanced coursework, where 61% of our students are in our advanced courses, when we look at our Hispanic students, only 39% of them are actually in those things. And if you look at our students with disabilities, it's 25.5% of the students being a part of those courses. We have a rich, diverse community. We have multilingual learners, and I want to make sure we're clear. Multilingual and Hispanic aren't the same. We have thank you, ma'am. We have varying language students here, and families here, and cultures here in Amherst. And so of our multilingual learners, I want you to notice Access is one of our tests that we provide for our multilingual learners, and we have an 89% participation rate. You might say, why be excited about participation? Because this means our students have trusted us enough to take the test. Because not every student want to exit our ELL services. Some of them find community there, and some of them want to stay there. But we have 9 students, and this is our 2025, that have exited this year. And then on average, it takes about 5.2 years for our students to actually exit out. But one thing that we have to identify and know, that being multilingual is a gift. It is a positive thing, not only for our students currently in the Amherst school districts, but when they graduate, when they continue on in life, that is a positive thing. So, we have a school committee, Sarah, that talks about student experience. She wants to know, yes, I hear you, but how do our students experience this? And this is just a typical student in our school system. So I'm using our full school system. They start out 3rd grade when we start some of our testing. And notice the trajectory that happens for them. They're doing okay, they dip down 7th, 8th, but then it comes back up. By show of hands, how many of you have ever gone to middle school? Okay, not all of you. Some of you were like, no, I'm not going to do middle school, I'll just hop on high school. But middle school is one of those places that it doesn't matter if you're in Amherst, South Carolina, Massachusetts, or Whitehall Island, South Carolina. Middle school is hard. It is a hard place to be, not because of the building, not because of the teachers, because of students themselves and how they're growing and where they are. And sometimes it is even more difficult if you have not had the rich instructional experiences necessary to succeed academically. And most times in middle schools, this is where you find kids who, I'm not sure what's happening academically, so I'm going to act out another way. So I'm going to find another way to move myself. You talked about isolating myself from that experience. And so you'll take a look at some of our data and you'll see that middle school's the place where some of our kids, most of our kids, are having the most struggles in our system. So I stand before you as a 56-year-old Black woman. Guess what happens if you are an SD student, a student with special education needs, a minority student, person of color, if you are a student that's from a low-income place, and if you are ELL, student with actual language needs, you are more likely to experience our system differently. And I want everybody to hear me say that clearly. Amherst is an excellent place to be. We have an excellent district, but not all of our kids experience it the same way. We're gonna look academically at that. So if you've noticed this dark blue line at the top of all of our students, again, we're looking at MCAS, this is a data point that we have that we're gonna use. So most of our students are doing, or all of our students, just in terms of the percent of meeting or exceeding, are doing exceptionally well. We have a couple subgroups, and again, this is not all of our subgroups, this is a couple of our subgroups. Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, English learners, multilingual learners, students with disabilities. They are experiencing this gap. It didn't just happen. Sometimes we use COVID as the, well, you know, it was an experience for them long before COVID. We have had historically gaps between subgroups in our districts. And so the question is not which curriculum do we use or what thing do we talk, or they need to do this. It is how as a system do we respond instructionally so that there is coherence and consistency that allows them to get their needs met. It is not a teacher problem, it is a system problem. We need to look deeper, and we can't choose this, well, we're gonna do this week. Oh, well, I'm gonna let that person do whatever they want. But you know, over here, we don't like it. What we have to do is figure out, what does it look like as a system to consistently be meeting the needs of kids so that we can meet them where they are, but ensure that they have access to grade level instruction. Because if I'm in sixth grade and I'm reading on a third grade level and you only meet me at third grade, I'm always going to be behind. There is not a way, there is not an interventionist that will pull me up if you only expose me to third grade. You have to get me introduced to grade level instruction if your goal is to make sure that I get closer here. Or
You're in sixth grade, I'm at a third grade level, and you teach at sixth grade level without scaffolding me up.
there you go, absolutely. Because the other thing happens too. Well, I'm only going to teach, this is the grade level, I'm only going to teach that. There are kids that you can't just choose to leave behind. And luckily, we're at a system where teachers are excellent and dedicated and truly care. And it's just as a system, we need to ensure that we have consistency, that we provide the professional development to learn to scaffold and to do all of those things. But also, we can't do it blindly. We have to make sure we have things in place that we can actually monitor progress. We have teachers that do this every day. Be very clear. This is not, oh, we now have to teach people. It is, oh, no, we just have to make sure that we build in the appropriate measures for people to get there. Okay, give me 1 second. So the same thing is happening not only in ELA for grades 3 and 6, but in math. Again, gaps. The gap is significant there. Even as people go up and note, even as we're improving over the years, we are improving over the years, the gap still exists. We have to figure it out. And so when you take a look, 7th and 8th grade, same type of thing. There are ways, there are times that we have gotten up and tried to close the gap, but then we still have those same issues across years, across the decades. Same thing for high school, grade 10. And notice that what happens, again, in high school, remember the grading system was different, because I want to remind everybody, this 94%, you might go, what happened? But the mechanism, the way we graded changed for the MCAS. But that's still there. And I want you to notice this line here. We have this flat line. This is meeting and exceeding. What it means here is that our ELL learners for these years, none of them, that's 0%, met or exceeded. This is not a student issue. This is not a teaching issue. This is not a, oh, our para issue or this issue. It is a systemic issue that we have to figure out the way to ensure that we're providing the leadership, the accountability, the tools, the progress monitoring to ensure that we are on a trajectory to be consistent so that it does not become the teacher lottery. That if I'm lucky enough to get a men's room, I'm gonna get the needs met. But if I'm not, then there might be a desperate way in terms of how I saw it. And I see, give me 1 second. Sarah was first.
I'll pass.
Okay.
I just was wondering, with the 9 students that sort of exited, that exited the ELL program, so they scored above 4.2 in access for English, showing their growth and proficiency, but it didn't meet this ELA standard. It still isn't grade level.
Right, this is.
So they
this is
still aren't
MCAS.
showing in that number. It says 0, even though they progressed.
They might, so this is MCAS.
River access is not way up.
Yes,
Yeah,
like two different tests.
right, 2 different tests.
Right, so they might be, proficient somewhere, but they aren't,
They aren't grade level.
they aren't grade level for 10th grade in high school
Ah,
here.
yeah.
Yep.
And we take that ELA MCAS after we've been here for 1 year.
Yes.
So like a newcomer doesn't take it the first year, but they take it the next.
That's exactly right. And her point is that we have students that will come here, let's say, from Tigrania.
Yeah.
And so after they've been here a year, okay, yes, you still take the test.
Yep.
Maybe haven't figured out the language, maybe haven't figured out, any of those things, but yes, you still get to sit for the test. Yes, John.
Has any other town figured this out?
So here's what I would say to that. I think there are towns that have gotten close in terms of, oh, let's figure out how do we rise all students, but not all towns in Massachusetts have the level of diversity that Amherst has. So you might not see the gaps. And you'll notice that I've said the middle school, Amherst, and I did not mention Pelham, right? Somebody tell me why did not, or Margaret knows why. Why didn't I mention Pelham, Sarah Beth?
Because we're too little.
Too small. So we can't report on numbers less than 10. So not all districts in Massachusetts have the same level number of students so that we can see whether they're actually closing those gaps. That's why it's important. One of the things we talked to Pelham about is making sure we have tools. We are using digital tools, the iReady diagnostic and things like that, so that we can measure on the ground in real time, because this is a lagging data point. So this, and what I mean by that is, this is what happened last time. So we can't wait a year to say, oh, well, notice there's a problem, let's try to fix that. So we need real in-time, in-the-moment data so that we can figure out how to help students. So I'm over here, Tanya needs this support. I can't wait till MCAS come back to say, oh, I wish I would have seen that Tanya had trouble with this, because they give us item analysis and all the things. So I think one of the things we have to do is look across our Commonwealth to see where else do we have our common schools, because they give us some schools that are in common. Where else are we finding schools that have closed the gap? I have not seen them, but again, I have only started looking at Massachusetts last year. So I will continue to look, and I think that's the, for our department.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering, is it a reasonable expectation that a student who's just moved to the US and isn't speaking English is going to be proficient enough in 1 year? Should we be testing them at 1 year? And doesn't it take years to master a new language?
I love that.
I'm not sure that this makes sense. Like, we
Well,
should
and now
see
this
it
is
in math, but in ELA, should we expect this of them?
I completely agree. This is the way that our Commonwealth law has it right now for DESE and things. But I want you to know, this is not just a first year newcomer. These are all of our ELL students that are in 10th grade. So be very clear when you see this represents everyone in that category, not just the newcomer who arrived last week.
I would want to ask the question, MCAS comes at the end of the year. By that time, how many teachers are surprised at the results of MCAS? Don't 99% of them know these students are the ones who are having difficulty? MCAS just reinforces that, there's nothing new. How can we find better mechanisms to identify the issues without waiting for state tests and a year later?
I'm glad you asked. Because here's the thing, we might not all agree on the way to get there, but we all have to agree that we have to have some tools in place to monitor progress. We cannot depend to say, well, well, he took this test and so I know it's good. Well, no, we need to be looking at it according to the full year, not just when it's time for MCAS prep testing. We need to be monitoring progress and we have to decide and agree that this is important enough for us to do that. We might not all like this particular mechanism or this tool or that tool, but we need a tool, a consistent tool across all of our districts to monitor progress. And right now, what we're using is allowing us to see that student data, allowing us to see and find those students, and not only find the student, but provide some supports around it by giving suggestions and recommendations for closing gaps. It is the thing we have to do, not because our teachers aren't great, not because they don't have great curriculum that they've produced. It is because we're trying to close gaps. And when you have to close gaps, you have to dig in a little deeper to really diagnose what's happening. So what we're going to take a look at is Stephanie's going to come talk about something different, not just MCAS. We need other data points. We need to take a look at other themes. How are we truly doing? The great thing about today and about state of the districts and state of schools that happens across the nation is it's really an opportunity to not only listen to what's happening from a leadership level, but you get to see it and try to really grapple with it. And I like the word grapple. We're grappling with this because I believe everybody in this room and online wants our kids to do better. We want there to be less of an achievement gap. Our differences might be around how we get there, but at least we're all, as long as we can all agree to row in the same direction, we won't be going backwards. Stephanie.
Thank you. So I'm Stephanie Joyce, and I'm the Curriculum Instruction Assessment Administration Officer under that big, beautiful umbrella of Student Academic Services. My allergies are acting up at the moment. They'll calm down. So I'm going to take us through some of the math and literacy data that we collect for some of the very reasons that you're asking about, because we need kind of data and information in the moment. We are going to count it as a win, some of what Tanya's already shared with us. We're going to count it as a win that we continue to outperform state students in the state and students in our nation. And we want to look more closely at what's happening within our district, not just how we compare outside of the district. And what you see here is that while 52% of our students are at or above grade level in green, in yellow we have students who are 1 year below, and in pink and red we have students who are 2 to 3 or more years below grade level in performance, what we would expect to have performance meet by for expectations by the end of grade level. If we think about that in a waffle, you can see that we've got 52% of our students meeting grade level expectations and 48% not. So we're going to take that a little further down, break it down by some grade levels, not just thinking about the district on K to 6, but starting with 5th grade and then moving 6th to 8th grade. And again, you're going to see that with the trajectory in math of improvement from K to 5, we've got 65% of our students at above grade level for meeting performance benchmarks. And look at what's happened here. We were able to shrink for our students that are performing 2 and 3 years below grade level to 12%. And then we see that some of that trajectory begins to dip from 6th grade from 65% to 60% and dip a little further in 7th and 8th grade. But we see this gigantic spike in 6th grade to 22% of students who are 2 or 3 more years below grade level. That grows to 26 and stalls there at 26 in 7th and 8th grade. If we start looking at cohorts, which is another really important way to look at our data, so we're not just looking at different groups of students from year to year, because then it's a little harder to compare. So this is our current 5th graders looking across 3 years of their growth. We can see some fairly steady math growth that's happened here again, getting to this 5th grade with 65% of our students achieving at or above grade level. But we see this tremendous vulnerability that's also occurred as we see those large numbers of students 2 and 3 grade levels below, that continues across middle school. So it's important for us to look again, take this data apart and look more deeply at what that growth looks like with our student groups. And we've got really compounding equity gaps here in math performance. So again, overall for our district, we're seeing that where our students are at 53% at or above grade level, but for our Hispanic Latino students, only 27%. For our students who are learning English language proficiency in their classrooms, at the same time they're learning academic content, just 18% of those students in K-6 are at those levels, and even smaller at 17% for our students with capabilities and needs who are most effectively met by having individualized education plans as well. This is performance. At the bottom, I want us to glance at what we call typical growth, because that's another very important measure for us. So that we have, as district leaders, our building leaders have this data. Our teachers have this data because of the platform, the data platform that we've been able to evolve and have access to in our districts. So typical growth is what we would expect to see by the end of the school year, 100% typical growth across the year. That works if you came into your grade level, not like that 6th grader Tanya talked about, who was functioning at 3rd grade level. They're going to need way more than 100% typical growth to catch up over a year. Principal Rodriguez is shaking his head. And so what we see here, I'm sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
I have a question. Is this on?
Do you need me to go back?
Well, no. But I have a question about grade placement. So for incoming students, especially maybe from other countries, are they tested in any way before being placed in a grade, or is it simply based on their age? That's one question. Or even students from other states or districts. And Dr. Z knows what I'm going to say. And then how are we deciding, if we do, whether a student can advance to the next grade? Because if we are advancing a student, let's say, who is 1 year behind in math to the next grade, almost by definition, they're going to then be 2 years behind because they're not going to catch up. So, so it seems very important to be putting students in the grade that is appropriate based on their level of learning, not just their age.
So I'm going to say when students come to register in a district, there is a grade level equivalent, especially when they come from another state. So students may come in and their last report card or last placement from the school confirms that they were in 2nd grade, and then they need to be placed in 3rd grade. It's not solely based on age. Usually we look at their records to determine what grade that they're going to go in. When a child is then placed within that classroom, what I've seen when I've gone in is a level of differentiation and scaffolding based on the classroom and instruction. That's what Tanya talked about the teacher lottery. So our system currently doesn't place children if they show up and they take the diagnostic and it says that they're on in 5th grade, but they're in 3rd grade. We don't immediately pluck them and put them in 5th grade. Because there are other factors too to placement, whether or not that is like, I'm going to say socially emotional, I'm going to say whether it's they're socially able to engage with their peers in 5th grade and those types of things. What the expectation usually is that instruction is shifted or differentiated, where I may be teaching a standard that's a 3rd grade standard, but I need to advance this work for the student who in geometry is far exceeding, but whereas in algebra in 3rd grade, they might be not performing that well. So there's also things in terms of the domains that we look at. So it all happens in the classroom.
So we need entry points at what we consider to be the floor of the grade level. If you're thinking about the curriculum as the floor, and then scaling excellence for our teachers and our learning environments that bring those students along, but also enrich students that are well above. Now we move to literacy. And again, we're going to take macro evidence as a win But as we look more closely here again, we see this trajectory of growth that's happened across to fifth grade. Look what's happened to our students that are 3 years below. It shrinks to 5%. That more than triples in sixth grade to 17% and continues to widen gaps in our middle school in seventh grade at 27%. 20% of those students and then 21% in eighth grade.
And
Yes.
And I learned how to actually use the mic, so.
So. I also know how to do it. So the middle school entry point is interesting, right? Because now that is also an entry point just to the whole system. So it's not just our own elementary students moving into our middle and high school, but it is also an entry point where other families treat, like my own family, when I moved here, I was going into seventh grade. And I came from a district where wasn't as academically strong, and so the supports were not that great. And when I came to seventh grade, it was the first time someone was like, ooh, she's smart, but she can only read at a third grade level. So it is a place that it's not just our own students matriculating up, but it is an entry point for lots of families when they come to the area.
Thank you. It's a really valid point. And we spent the morning talking about that multitude of factors that contribute to how we interpret this data. So we're being very careful not to kind of ladder inference here about what it means. But the need, as Tommy said, about systemic indicators that are going to help us drive progress forward is something we're going to continue to keep our lens on and have their support. So again, if we take a look at another cohort and some cohort trends in literacy for our K-2 students, we see a real trajectory of growth here again, and the students that are 2 and 3 years below, actually 1 to 3 years grade levels below, diminishing. District-wide, K-6, and we see that same kind of upward momentum, and we've actually garnered a 9 percentage point advantage over the years from K-6. And then we take a look at our current 8th graders, and we look at them as a cohort, so we can look back at 7th grade. We see this win here again, where there's 4% growth compared to what they were in 7th grade. But we've got to really look at this gap again, because the gap grows in 7th grade to 20% of students 2 and 3 years below grade level, and expands to 21% in 8th grade. I call our attention again to typical growth over here, because over here we see that this year, middle of the year, winter assessments, that even 7th graders who are mid and above grade level, 0% typical growth. Our 7th graders who were 2 grade levels below, 0% typical growth. What we would expect to happen by the middle of the year, about 50% typical growth to get that 100% typical growth in June. Plus get some 8th graders who are that early on grade level of 8th grade, made only 25% typical growth. And what this reminds us of is when there are big gaps that build and are persistent, these students at 2 grade levels below with 0% typical growth would need 267% typical growth by the end of the year to get to grade level. Those are big gaps to close that we want to rectify. And finally, looking at some literacy data and thinking about how systemic barriers are compounding things for our most complex learners. This is median typical growth. This says that while 79% of our students are median typical growth is 79, that means half of our students are below that, and half of our students are above that, maybe well above that by the middle of the year. And now we see what happens for these students of higher need. And then we look down at our Hispanic Latino students, we see what appears to be good median typical growth for these students. But as we look more closely at the performance levels now, we see that 60% of those students are 1 to 2 to 3 or more grade levels below. And something similar happens for our Black and African American students, where they have 54% typical growth, but not enough to close those gaps when 58% of them are well below grade level in performance? Yes.
Tina, then,
Oh, sorry, I saw his hand go up first.
That's okay.
Got the microphone.
We, as we've talked about this morning, with adolescents in middle school, the social emotional, the body development, the brain development, how that plays into social emotional acceptance, is there any information or studies how that correlates into these students who are already like at this point, but then they all of a sudden really feel like they're not fitting in and that type of thing based on all the other changes that are happening? And then how does that correlate? I mean, well, it ties back into the original statement about needs. So if their safety needs are not being met and they're not feeling that they're adequate, then the effort to want to achieve or learn drops. So how does that get played into numbers?
So Tina's done this beautiful job of helping us circle back to how Dr. Z started, safety and wellness and those kinds of things, and bringing us back around to how we want to invest all of you in thinking, how do we bring that all together with the kind of data that we have. So, I'm sorry, again, yes, please.
How do you involve the parents in this information and ask for their help, especially at home, if possible, to increase the ability for reading, opportunity to read, etc.?
Thank you. That's a really important question. So one of the things that we're pleased about with the data platform that we've evolved over some years now is that we have family reports that are generated in family-friendly language that we have in many multiple languages. That our elementary schools, our teachers actually meet in fall conferences and explain those math and literacy family reports to families. And then in the middle of the year and the end of the year, they have access to those family reports, and teachers are very happy to talk with families about them. We also have programs in our school system where we actually have family literacy events and family math events, so we're able to share with families about ways that they can involve and have materials from us to invest in supporting students at home too. Our math curriculum enables family to have access any day of the week to the learning that's going on. They can see the videos that children are learning. They have weekly letters about what's included in the curriculum and tips for families every week about how they can be involved in math learning at home as well. So thank you. It's a really important question. And Tanya's going to help us wrap up and solve all the problems.
Quick question.
Yes.
Where, she said there was weekly reports with families. Where is that happening?
Thank you. In many cases, they're coming home in backpacks, but they're also available digitally on the family.
But for what grades, I guess?
Oh, thank you for asking.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
K6. K6. Yeah.
All right, so Rita Pearson, now what, so what? What happens next? Everyone, I think here, well, let me ask this question. Any of you were like, oh, I didn't know that. Was there, that there were disparities in terms of academic? Okay, excellent. That's a good place for us. I need you all to know, coming from a district where people are shocked that there are disparities in academics, that is a good starting point. A very good starting point. How many of you know that we have excellent teachers? How many of you know we have excellent leaders and administrators? How many of you know we have excellent families and caring caregivers and community people? How many know that we have the best students? I mean simply the best students. Now, with all of that, our system has to meet them where they are. Our system has to get to that level where our system as a whole has the best instruction, the best supports, the best and most rigorous opportunities for kids, post-secondary opportunities. I used to tell my students when I was in that classroom, I'm not just teaching you calculus or algebra 2. I'm trying to make sure that no matter what opportunity you want after high school, you get to have. Because sometimes, if kids don't take advantage and meet the needs, their academic needs, they then become limited in what options they do have. I might not be able to go to Amherst College. I might not be able to go to UMass because my academic progress and achievement doesn't allow it. Our job is to make sure that we make the possibilities endless for our kids. And you might be sitting here saying, well, I work at the bank. Why are you telling me? Our students are going to be the economic drivers of this community, of all of our communities. They're going to be the people leading governments and school committees and town councils and finance chairmen. Those are our kids. We have to ensure that we provide them with a place, a space where they are seen, valued, known, but also educated so that they can get there. Because at some point, I'm going to retire. Sarah Marshall, you know I was going to get it in. So that Leo and Hyacinth, my grandbabies, they're 5 months old, by the way, can say, hey, Grandma, what'd you do? And I can say, I was a part of a town that got together and decided differences are not the thing that's going to drive us anymore. We're all going to row in the same direction, even if we have different beliefs of how we get there, to make sure that we do right by our kids, because they deserve it. So I thank you for your time. I apologize for going over, and I'll see you in a second.
So you were supposed to take a break,
It's not,
but we're all adults, so we're gonna self-manage. So we're gonna, in your folders, you have that wonderful personalized sheet that says your name and what group you belong to. And so we're gonna kind of mix us up a bit because you've been with your elbow partners, which you sat with for a while and you felt really good because you knew them. And now we're gonna kind of put you in small groups to have a discussion around the mixed dialogue. So there's also another handout with some questions around what stood out to you,